"Fix this and I'll give you $100,000," the billionaire CEO sneered. The waitress did, and he froze in shock. But she rejected his money, revealing his darkest secret and leaving everyone speechless. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The Aston Martin Vantage sputtered to a stop in front of Route 9 diner like a wounded animal gasping its last breath. Rain hammered the asphalt, turning the Nevada desert highway into a river of mud and regret. Through the diner's frost-covered windows, Sofia Delgado watched the driver's door swing open. Alexander Vega stepped out, and even from 50 feet away, she could see the fury radiating off him like heat from an engine. Designer suit, Italian leather shoes now soaked. The kind of man who'd never changed a tire in his life. Sofia's hand stilled on the coffee pot she'd been wiping down. Her heart didn't skip. It clenched, hard and sudden, like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. She knew that car. Knew the prototype engine humming beneath that sleek hood. She designed it 5 years ago, in another lifetime. "Sofia, table 3 needs." Jenny's voice faded as the diner door crashed open. Alexander Vega stood in the doorway, rain streaming from his hair, eyes scanning the empty diner with barely controlled rage. His gaze landed on Sofia, dismissed her in half a second, then moved to the elderly cook behind the counter. "I need a mechanic," he said, voice sharp as broken glass. "Now." Old Mike looked up from his crossword, eyebrows raised. "Closest garage is 40 miles north. Closed for the night." "I don't have 40 miles. Alexander's jaw tightened. "That car outside is worth more than this entire establishment. Someone here must know something about engines." Sofia set down the coffee pot carefully, her pulse thundering in her ears. She should walk away, should let him stand there, soaked and furious, just like she'd stood 5 years ago in that boardroom while security escorted her out. But her hands were already reaching for the dish towel, already moving toward the door. "I can take a look," she said quietly. Alexander's gaze snapped to her, and for the first time he actually saw her. Dark eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You're a waitress." "I'm a lot of things." Sofia pushed past him into the rain, not waiting for permission. The Vantage sat in the parking lot like a wounded predator, hood already smoking slightly. Sofia's chest tightened with something between grief and rage. This engine, her engine, shouldn't be failing. Not unless someone had deliberately sabotaged it. "If you can get this running," Alexander said behind her, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne mixed with rain, "I'll give you $100 million. Sofia's hand froze on the hood release. Slowly she turned to face him. His expression was dead serious. No smile, no joke. Just the kind of casual arrogance that came from having more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. "I don't want your money," she said, and popped the hood. The engine bay glowed in the diner's neon light. Beautiful, complex, utterly familiar. Her fingers traced the intake manifold, found the disconnected sensor wire within 30 seconds. Deliberate, calculated, the kind of sabotage designed to fail at exactly the wrong moment. Behind her, Alexander was silent, watching. Sofia reconnected the wire, adjusted the throttle position sensor, and checked the fuel pressure regulator. 3 minutes of work. 5 years of buried expertise flowing through her hands like muscle memory. "Try it now," she said, stepping back. Alexander moved to the driver's seat, and the engine roared to life. Perfect, powerful, exactly as she'd designed it to sound. The look on his face shifted from suspicion to something else. Surprise, maybe respect. He stepped out of the car, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, and stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Who are you?" His voice was different now, quieter, actually curious. Sofia wiped her grease-stained hands on the towel, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. Lightning cracked across the sky behind him, illuminating his face in stark white light. "Sofia," she said. Just Sofia. But Alexander was looking at her hands now, at the confident way she'd touched his car, at the expensive watch on his wrist, Tag Heuer Monaco, the same model she used to wear before her life imploded. "You knew exactly where to look," he said slowly. That wasn't luck. Sofia's heart hammered against her ribs. She should walk away, should go back inside and let him drive off into the storm, never knowing how close he'd just come to his past. "The $100 million, Alexander said, pulling out his phone. "I wasn't joking. Name your price, name your terms." Anyone who can fix a Vega Motors prototype in the rain deserves. I said I don't want your money. Sophia turned toward the diner, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. Drive safe, Mr. Vega. She was halfway to the door when his voice stopped her. How did you know my name? Sophia didn't turn around. It's written on the car. It wasn't. She knew that. He knew that. The door closed behind her, and through the rain-streaked window, she watched Alexander Vega stand in the parking lot, staring after her like a man who'd just seen a ghost. The Aston Martin appeared in the diner parking lot at exactly 7:47 a.m., 3 days after the storm. Sophia knew the time because she'd been watching the highway since her shift started at 6, telling herself she wasn't waiting for him, telling herself the knot in her stomach was just bad coffee, not dread. The engine purred now, perfect, flawless, everything it should be. Alexander Vega stepped out wearing a different suit, this one charcoal gray and probably worth more than her yearly rent. No rain this time, just bright Nevada sun and the kind of determination that made her hands still on the coffee pot. Morning, Sophia. He said her name like he'd been practicing it, like it meant something. Jenny dropped the menu she'd been holding. You know him? No, Sophia said. But Alexander was already walking toward the counter, and lying suddenly felt pointless. He slid onto a stool directly in front of her, and up close, she could see the dark circles under his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw, a man who hadn't slept well in 3 days. Black coffee, he said, and 5 minutes of your time. Sophia poured the coffee with steady hands, years of practice keeping her face neutral. I'm working. I came to thank you. He wrapped both hands around the mug like he needed something to hold. Properly. That engine you fixed? It was headed to the International Auto Expo. If it had failed on stage in front of investors and press, he trailed off, something dark crossing his expression. Let's just say you saved more than a car. Anyone with basic mechanical knowledge could have. Don't. His voice was quiet, but firm. I've had 3 master mechanics look at that engine since. They all said the same thing. Whoever fixed it knew the Vega Motors V12 prototype better than anyone outside the company, better than most people inside the company. Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears. She set down the coffee pot carefully, buying time. I read automotive magazines, Popular Design. The prototype hasn't been in any magazines. Alexander's eyes, sharp, intelligent, relentless, never left her face. It's not scheduled for public release until next month. The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Sophia was acutely aware of Jenny pretending not to listen, of old Mike's suspicious glance from the kitchen. Where did you learn to work on cars? Alexander asked, and it sounded like genuine curiosity, not interrogation. Around. Sophia refilled a sugar dispenser that didn't need refilling. Picked things up over the years. From who? Does it matter? It does to me. He leaned forward slightly. Anyone who can diagnose and repair a prototype engine in under 4 minutes in the rain without diagnostic equipment, that's not picking things up. That's expertise, training, years of it. Sophia's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She didn't need to check it to know it was probably a bill collector or a reminder that her student loan default had entered its 63rd month. The distance between who she used to be and who she was now felt like the Grand Canyon. I went to school, she admitted finally, the words tasting like surrender. Studied engineering, didn't finish. It wasn't entirely a lie. She had studied engineering, just at Columbia, not some community college. And she had finished, top of her class, multiple job offers, a future so bright it had felt like staring into the sun, until Damian Cross had made sure she'd never work in the industry again. Which school? Alexander pressed. It was a long time ago. How long? Mr. Vega? Alexander, he corrected. And I'm not trying to interrogate you. I'm trying to understand how someone with your obvious talent is serving coffee in a highway diner instead of what? Sophia's voice came out sharper than intended. Working for a company like Vega Motors? Designing engines for people who can afford $100 million bribes? Something flickered in his expression. Not anger. Regret, maybe. That was crass of me. The money. I just wanted to show your appreciation. Sophia's laugh was hollow. By throwing cash at the problem. That's what people like you do, isn't it? Assume everything has a price. The words hung between them, sharp and bitter. Alexander set down his coffee cup carefully, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, almost gentle. You're right, he said. That was arrogant. I apologize. Sophia blinked, caught off guard. Billionaire CEOs didn't apologize. Not in her experience. I came back because I wanted to thank you properly, Alexander continued. And because, he hesitated, and for the first time he looked uncertain. Because my mother wants to meet you. Your mother. She was in the car that night, the passenger seat. His expression softened in a way that made him suddenly look younger, more human. She has advanced MS. That car trip was supposed to be special. One last road trip before her mobility gets worse. When the engine failed, she thought. He stopped, jaw tight. You gave her that memory back. So yes, my mother would like to thank the woman who fixed her son's car in the rain. Sophia's throat tightened. She thought of her own mother. Gone 6 years now. Cancer. The kind of loss that left holes nothing could fill. I don't, she started, but Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire posture changed. I have to take this. He stood, leaving a $100 bill on the counter for a $5 coffee. Think about it, Sophia, just dinner. No money, no pressure, just gratitude. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing behind the counter with Jenny's shocked expression and old Mike's knowing look. The $100 bill sat there like an accusation. Through the window, Sophia watched the Aston Martin pull away, smooth, perfect, everything she'd once dreamed of creating. Her hands were shaking. The garage behind Sophia's rented house smelled like motor oil and regret. She waited until midnight to open the safe, old habit. Like the past was something that could only be faced in darkness. The concrete floor was cold beneath her knees as she pried up the loose board, fingers finding the hidden compartment by memory alone. The metal box felt heavier than it should. 5 years of evidence, 5 years of proof, 5 years of a life that had been stolen. Sophia's hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Technical reports, design schematics, email threads. Every document bore the Vega Motors logo, that sleek V that had once represented everything she'd worked toward. Her employee badge photo stared back at her, younger, hopeful, wearing a smile that believed the world was fair. Sofia Delgado, lead engineer, prototype division. She traced the faded lamination, remembering the day they'd taken that photo. 23 years old, Columbia diploma still fresh, the youngest lead engineer in company history. Damian Cross had congratulated her personally. His handshake firm, his smile warm. 3 months later, he'd destroyed her. Sophia spread the documents across the garage floor like evidence at a crime scene. Here, the original V12 prototype designs with her signature, her handwriting in the margins. There, the incident report from the catastrophic test failure, dated March 15, 2020. The same report that had blamed her for faulty calculations, negligent oversight, corporate sabotage. Except she had the real calculations. The one showing the engine was perfect, and she had the proof of what Damian had done. Her fingers found the USB drive, black, innocuous, containing security footage that had cost her 3 months of salary to obtain. The timestamp showed Damian in the lab at 2:47 a.m., 2 days before the test. Showed him accessing her workstation. Showed him modifying the fuel injection protocols that would cause the engine to fail spectacularly, publicly, ruining both the prototype and her career in one calculated move. Sophia's breath came shallow as she clicked through the files. Bank transfers, Damian's accounts showing deposits from Vega's competitors, email correspondence discussing eliminating the Delgado problem, a recorded phone call where he laughed about that brilliant bitch never working in automotive again. The evidence was ironclad, had been for 5 years. She'd never used it. Sophia closed her eyes, remembering that day. The boardroom. Alexander Vega at the head of the table, younger then, newly promoted to CEO after his father's death. His face had been stone as security escorted her out. He hadn't looked at her, hadn't asked for her side, just signed the termination papers and let Damian's lies destroy everything she'd built. Miss Delgado, you're being terminated for gross negligence and suspected corporate espionage. She'd tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but lawyers had appeared, Damian's lawyers, with more fabricated evidence, more lies, until her own words sounded like desperate excuses. They'd blacklisted her, every automotive company, every engineering firm. Her name became synonymous with failure, with betrayal. Columbia stopped returning her calls. Her apartment was repossessed. Her fiancé left, unable to handle the scandal. 6 months later, she was serving coffee at Route 9 Diner, changing oil in a garage that smelled like broken dreams. Sophia's phone buzzed, Alexander's name glowing on the screen. A text message. My mother is asking about you again. She doesn't ask for much these days. Would Friday work for dinner? Her thumb hovered over the delete button. 5 years. 5 years of silence, of hiding, of letting Damien Cross win because the fight had seemed too expensive, too exhausting, too impossible. But Alexander had come back, had looked at her like she mattered, had said his mother wanted to thank her. Helen Vega, the matriarch, the woman who'd built Vega Motors from a small garage into an empire before illness forced her to step back. The woman whose signature appeared on Sophia's termination letter, right beside her son's. Sophia stared at the evidence spread before her, at the proof of her innocence, at the documentation of Damien's betrayal. She could walk away, could ignore Alexander's text, pack up these files, and keep living this half-life in the desert, safe, small, forgotten. Or she could go to that dinner, could sit across from the people who destroyed her and smile like the past didn't matter, could get close enough to destroy them the way they'd destroyed her, could make them see what they'd done, make Alexander Vega understand that the woman who'd fixed his engine in the rain was the same woman he'd thrown away without a second thought. Revenge. The word tasted like copper on her tongue. Sophia gathered the documents carefully, returning them to the safe. But she kept one thing out, her old employee badge. She held it up to the garage light, watching her younger self smile back with naive optimism. He doesn't recognize you, she whispered to the photo. But he will. Her phone buzzed again. Alexander, persistent. No pressure. But she'd really like to meet you. Says anyone who can fix a car in a storm deserves her best pot roast. Sophia's fingers moved before her mind could stop them. Friday works. 7 p.m. The response came immediately. Perfect. I'll send a car. She set the phone down and stared at her reflection in the darkened garage window. 5 years older. Harder. Different enough that Alexander Vega hadn't seen through the waitress uniform to the engineer beneath. Different enough to walk back into Vega Motors and make them all pay. Sophia locked the safe, replaced the floorboard, and stood. Her legs felt steady now. Her hands had stopped shaking. Damien Cross thought he'd won. Thought she was broken, beaten, gone. He was about to learn otherwise. Game on, Sophia said to the empty garage, and smiled. Damien Cross saw her the moment she stepped into Vega Motors headquarters. He'd been crossing the marble lobby, coffee in hand, mind on the upcoming board meeting, when movement near the elevators caught his eye. A woman in a modest blue dress, dark hair pulled back, speaking quietly with Alexander near the reception desk. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers, shattering against the floor in an explosion of ceramic and liquid. Sofia Delgado, here, alive, smiling at Alexander like the past 5 years hadn't happened. Damien, you all right? Jessica from accounting paused, concerned. Fine, he managed, voice strangled. Just clumsy. But his mind was racing, pulse hammering in his ears as he watched Alexander guide Sophia toward the executive elevators. Watched him place a hand on her lower back, casual, protective. Watched her laugh at something he said. No. No, no, no. Sofia Delgado was supposed to be gone. Broken. Working some dead-end job in the middle of nowhere, her career destroyed. Her reputation ruined. That was the plan. That was how it had to stay. Damien turned on his heel, ignoring Jessica's questions, and headed straight for his office. His hands shook as he unlocked his computer, pulling up surveillance footage from the lobby. Rewound. Watched Alexander and Sophia enter together at 9:47 a.m. This is Sophia, Alexander was saying to the security guard, his voice picked up by the microphone. She'll be consulting on the new prototype series. Full building access, please. Consulting. Full access. Alexander's protective posture, the easy familiarity between them. Damien's stomach churned with ice-cold dread. She couldn't be here, couldn't be close to Alexander, couldn't be anywhere near the prototypes or the files or, oh God, the files. If she'd kept evidence, if she'd documented anything from 5 years ago, if Alexander actually listened to her. Damien grabbed his phone, fingers flying across the keyboard. He needed to move fast, needed to poison this before it grew roots. To Alexander Vega. Subject, urgent, security concern. Alexander, we need to talk immediately. It's about your new consultant. I've uncovered some disturbing information that requires your attention before this goes any further. My office. Now. He hit send, then opened his personal safe. Inside lay his insurance policy, the fabricated documents he'd created 5 years ago, updated and refined over time. Email chains showing Sofia Delgado corresponding with competitors. Financial records suggesting corporate espionage. Testimony from witnesses who'd seen her acting suspiciously. All of it fake. All of it meticulously crafted. All of it designed to bury her so deep she'd never surface. Damien had spent 5 years perfecting these lies, adding layers of credibility, backdating documents. Just in case she ever tried to come back. His office door opened. Alexander stood there, expression tight with confusion and annoyance. "This better be important," Alexander said. "I'm in the middle of—" "Close the door." Damien's voice came out harsher than intended. He forced himself to breathe, to smile. "Please, this is sensitive." Alexander's jaw tightened, but he complied. "What's this about?" "Your consultant, Sofia Delgado." Damien watched Alexander's face carefully. "You ran a background check, I assume." "She fixed my car. My mother wants to— She's not who she says she is." Damien slid a folder across the desk. "I did some digging. Alexander, she used to work here." That got his attention. Alexander's hand stilled on the folder. "What?" 5 years ago. Lead engineer. Fired for corporate espionage and sabotage." Damien leaned forward, voice dropping. "She nearly destroyed our prototype program. Cost us millions. And now she's back, getting close to you, getting access to our facilities. That's impossible." But Alexander was opening the folder now, scanning the fabricated documents. "I would have recognized." "Would you? You were new to the CEO position. Your father had just died. You signed 100 termination papers that year." Damien's voice dripped with false sympathy. "She knew you wouldn't remember her face. That's why she came back now." Alexander's face had gone pale. "The engine. She knew exactly how to fix it because she designed it. Or at least contributed to the original specifications before she was caught selling secrets to Apex Automotive." Damien pulled up more forged emails on his screen. "Look at these communications. Dated March 2020. She was planning to sell our V12 prototype designs to our biggest competitor. Why didn't I know about this?" Alexander's voice was dangerous now. "Your father handled it personally. Wanted to keep it quiet to avoid scandal." The lie came smoothly. Damien had practiced it for years. "The security footage was sealed, the investigation buried. We paid off Apex to keep them from using the stolen designs. It was beautiful, really. Untraceable. Every document looked legitimate, every timestamp aligned, every signature forged perfectly." Alexander was staring at the papers like they were a snake about to strike. "She's been lying to me. She's been playing you," Damien corrected gently. "Think about it. She randomly fixes your car, shows up at exactly the right place and time, gets invited into the building. This is calculated, Alexander. She's here for revenge, or for another attempt at corporate espionage, or both." Alexander's hands clenched into fists on the desk. "My mother cannot know about this. Helen's health is fragile enough." Damien stood, moving around the desk. "I'll handle this quietly. We'll revoke her access, escort her out, and—" "No." Alexander's voice was ice. "I'll handle it myself." Damien's stomach flipped, but he kept his expression neutral. "Are you sure that's wise? She made a fool of me." Alexander's eyes had gone cold, hard. The ruthless businessman emerging from beneath the grief-stricken sun. In front of my mother. In front of my staff. Used my gratitude to manipulate her way back inside. "Then let me—" "I said I'll handle it." Alexander gathered the fabricated documents, his jaw set. "Where is she now?" "Conference room B. Your mother's showing her the old design archives." "Perfect." Helen was already attached. That would make Alexander's rage even sharper when he confronted Sofia. The betrayal would cut deeper. Alexander strode toward the door, then paused. "Thank you, Damien, for catching this. That's what I'm here for." Damien smiled. Protecting the company, no matter what. The door closed. Damien waited 30 seconds, then pulled up the security feed for Conference Room B. On screen, Sofia was laughing at something Helen had said, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. Damien poured himself a scotch, expensive, smooth, celebratory. 5 years ago, Sofia Delgado had been brilliant, ethical, unstoppable. She would have exposed his embezzlement, his corporate sabotage, his systematic theft of company resources. She would have destroyed him. So he'd destroyed her first. And now, when she'd somehow found the courage to resurface, he'd destroyed her again. "Stay buried," Damien whispered to the screen, watching Alexander's furious approach down the hallway. This time, stay buried. Helen Vega didn't trust easily, and she certainly didn't trust men who smiled too much. Damien Cross smiled constantly. She'd been watching him for years. The way he positioned himself in meetings, the calculated warmth in his voice, the convenient timing of his discoveries. When Alexander had stormed into conference room B 3 days ago and publicly humiliated Sophia, Helen had seen Damien watching from the hallway. He'd been smiling then too. Now, at 2:17 a.m., Helen sat in her wheelchair outside Damien's office, listening to the building settle into silence. The night security guard had done his rounds 20 minutes ago. The executive floor was empty. Her hands trembled slightly. The MS made everything harder, but she managed to pick the lock with tools her late husband had taught her to use decades ago. Some skills you never forgot. Damien's office smelled like expensive cologne and desperation. Helen moved to his desk, booting up his computer. She'd watched him type his password enough times. V3 Gamma TRs 2020. Arrogant, using the company name like he owned it. The screen illuminated her face as she navigated through folders. Personnel files, financial records. Nothing unusual at first. Then she found the hidden partition. Her breath caught. Encrypted files with innocuous names, but the file sizes were wrong. Too large for simple spreadsheets. Helen inserted her USB drive, the one with decryption software her grandson had sent her. Sometimes having a hacker in the family was useful. The files unspooled like a confession. Bank transfers. Damien's accounts receiving payments from Apex Automotive, Horizon Motors, Deutsche Engineering. Competitors paying millions for Vega Motors' proprietary designs. Helen's hands clenched on the wheelchair armrests. She clicked deeper. Email correspondence dated 5 years back. The Delgado problem has been neutralized. She'll never work in this industry again. Prototype sabotage blamed successfully. AM Vega signed termination without question. AM Alexander Michael Vega, her son. The emails detailed how Damien had framed Sofia Delgado, falsified documents, planted evidence, paid witnesses, all to cover his theft and ensure the brilliant engineer who'd discovered his embezzlement was destroyed before she could expose him. Helen felt rage burning through her chest, hot and sharp despite her failing body. She copied everything, her movements methodical despite the tremor in her hands. Financial crimes, corporate espionage, fraud, enough evidence to send Damien to federal prison for decades, and enough to prove Sofia Delgado's innocence. Footsteps in the hallway made Helen freeze. She closed files quickly, ejected the drive, powered down the computer. Her wheelchair was too slow for escape, so she waited in shadows behind Damien's desk, heart hammering. The footsteps passed. Night security, probably. Helen left the office exactly as she'd found it. Lock re-engaged, no trace of her presence. In the elevator to the parking garage, she clutched the USB drive like a lifeline. Alexander found the envelope on his desk at 6:45 a.m. No return address, just a USB drive and one word in his mother's handwriting. Watch. His hands shook as he inserted the drive. Security footage from March 2020. Damien entering the prototype lab at 2:47 a.m. Damien accessing Sophia's workstation. Damien modifying code, his face calm, clearly knowing exactly what he was doing. Alexander's stomach dropped. Bank records, payments to Damien from competitors, millions of dollars, years of theft, emails, Damien's emails, discussing Sophia's termination, celebrating her destruction. She's too smart. Had to be eliminated before she connected the embezzlement to me. Vega's too grieving over Daddy's death to question anything. Alexander's vision blurred red. He'd done this. Signed those termination papers without investigation, without question, because he'd been drowning in grief and Damien had been convincing, and he'd trusted. His office door opened. Helen wheeled herself inside, her face grave. "You found it," she said simply. "You broke into Damien's office?" Alexander's voice cracked. "Mother, you could have been caught. I'm dying anyway. MS doesn't leave time for caution." Helen's voice was steel. "But you needed the truth. Sophia." Alexander's throat closed around her name. "I destroyed her. She was innocent and I—" "Yes, you did. Now you fix it." Alexander stared at the evidence of Damien's betrayal and his own blindness. 3 days ago, he'd confronted Sophia publicly, accused her of espionage, called her a liar in front of his entire executive team. The look on her face, shock, pain, then worse, resignation, like she'd expected this. "Where is she now?" Alexander asked. "Route 9. Diner, probably." Helen's voice softened. "That woman fixed your car in a storm, fixed the engine she designed. She's been hiding for 5 years, and you dragged her back into this nightmare. I have to find her, have to explain. You have to do more than explain." Helen's eyes were fierce. "You have to give her justice. Public justice. Make Damien pay." Thunder rumbled outside. Rain beginning. "The expo," Alexander said. "Friday night. Press, investors, cameras everywhere. Perfect stage for the truth," Helen agreed. Route 9. Diner was empty except for Sophia and the storm. She was wiping tables when the door crashed open. Alexander stood there, soaked, holding something in his hands. Sophia's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "We're closed." "I know everything." Alexander crossed the diner in 3 strides. "Sophia, I'm so sorry." He held out the USB drive like a confession. "Your mother's evidence," Sophia said quietly. She'd expected this. Helen Vega didn't miss details. "You knew she would investigate?" "I hoped. Counted on it." Sophia set down her cloth. "Helen Vega doesn't miss details. You came back for revenge." Alexander's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "You have every right to destroy me. This evidence could ruin us." Sophia studied him. The broken billionaire. The man who'd believed Damien's lies, who'd humiliated her 3 days ago. The man whose mother was dying, whose grief had been weaponized, who was now standing drenched and desperate, offering her the power to destroy everything. "I don't want revenge," Sophia said finally. "I want justice." "Then take it." Alexander placed the drive on the counter. "Friday, the expo. Tell the world what Damien did. What I did. I'll stand beside you and confirm every word. You'd sacrifice your company. I'd sacrifice anything to make this right." His voice was raw. "You were brilliant, and we destroyed you. You deserved everything, and we took it away." Sophia picked up the USB drive, feeling its weight. 5 years of evidence, 5 years of waiting. "Friday," she agreed. "But I do this my way. No lawyers, no spin, just truth. Whatever you need." Sophia looked at Alexander and saw genuine remorse. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it was a start. "Go home, get dry. Friday, we end this." Alexander nodded. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, you're the best engineer I never deserved to lose." Then he was gone, leaving Sophia alone with the storm and the evidence that would change everything. She allowed herself 1 moment of tears. Then she started planning. The Vega Motors International Expo filled the Los Angeles Convention Center with opulence that made headlines. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, a guest list reading like Forbes 500, journalists from Auto Week, Motor Trend, Wall Street Journal, investors from 3 continents, cameras everywhere, live streaming to millions. Damien Cross stood center stage, basking in spotlight like a man who owned the world. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness represents 5 years of innovation. The Vega Motors Vise 12 Phoenix, the most advanced engine ever created." Behind him, enormous screens displayed the engine in stunning detail. Sophia's engine, her design, with Damien's signature on every patent. In the audience, Sophia stood between Alexander and Helen, hands steady despite her racing heart. She wore simple black armor, not decoration. "He's very confident," Helen murmured. "That will make the fall more satisfying." Damien continued his presentation, detailing specifications Sophia had calculated 5 years ago, discussing innovations she'd pioneered, taking credit for brilliance that had never been his. The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. Alexander's hand found Sophia's, squeezed once. "Ready?" She nodded. Alexander signaled the tech booth. The screens behind Damien flickered. Damien turned with a frown. "Technical difficulties. Give us..." The screens changed. Security footage appeared. Damien entering the lab at 2:47 a.m. March 2020. Damien accessing Sophia's workstation. Damien sabotaging the prototype. His face clearly visible. Actions deliberate. The audience murmured, confused. "What is this?" Damien's voice cracked. "Turn that off." The footage continued. Bank transfers appeared. millions flowing from competitors into Damien's offshore accounts. Email correspondence discussing corporate espionage, discussing the Delgado problem, discussing how to frame an innocent engineer. Murmurs grew louder. Journalists typed furiously. Investors stood, demanding explanations. Alexander walked onto stage, his presence commanding immediate silence. My name is Alexander Vega. 5 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. Damien backed away, face sheet white. Alexander, what are you? I terminated an engineer named Sofia Delgado based on fabricated evidence. Alexander's voice never wavered. Evidence created by the man beside me. Evidence designed to cover his crimes while destroying an innocent woman's career. The screens changed. Sofia's original designs appeared. Her signatures, her calculations, her brilliance on display. Then Damien's patents, filed months after her termination, claiming her work as his own. The engine you just applauded? Designed by Sofia Delgado, the woman I wrongfully terminated. The woman who spent 5 years serving coffee because I was too blind to question convenient lies. A spotlight found Sofia. Cameras swiveled toward her. She stood slowly, every eye on her face. Sofia Delgado, Alexander said, voice thick with emotion. Would you please join me? The walk to stage felt like miles. Sofia was aware of whispers, of cameras tracking her, of Damien's panicked expression. She took the microphone Alexander offered, faced the audience, and spoke. My name is Sofia Delgado. I graduated top of my class from Columbia. I was hired by Vega Motors at 23 as their youngest lead engineer. I designed the V12 Phoenix engine. The screens displayed her original work, undeniable proof. Then Damien Cross sabotaged my prototype to frame me for his own espionage. Sofia turned to face Damien directly. He destroyed my career, my reputation, my future, because I discovered his embezzlement, and he needed me silenced. Damien lunged toward the exit. Security was waiting, federal agents. Damien Cross, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. Cameras captured everything. Damien's face twisting with rage, handcuffs clicking, his protests drowned by the crowd's roar. Alexander stepped forward. Vega Motors failed Sofia Delgado. I failed her. I'm here tonight to publicly apologize and make amends. The screens changed. Sofia's name appeared in bold. Lead engineer, V12 Phoenix project. Her old employee photo beside her current image. This woman deserves every accolade this industry can offer, Alexander said. She deserves her career back, her reputation restored, her brilliance recognized. Helen wheeled herself onto stage, presence commanding despite frailty. I'm Helen Vega, founder of this company. I'm ashamed we allowed Sofia's talent to be destroyed by lies. She looked into cameras. Consider this my personal guarantee. Sofia Delgado's name will be cleared in every industry database. Her patents restored, her genius acknowledged. The audience erupted in applause. Sofia stood center stage, cameras flashing like stars, and felt 5 years of weightlift. Tears streamed down her face. Relief, vindication, grief for years lost. Alexander approached, voice low. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'll spend however long it takes making this right. Sofia looked at him and saw genuine remorse, saw a man willing to sacrifice his reputation for justice. Then let's start now, she said. The applause continued. The cameras recorded, and Sofia Delgado finally got her name back. The headlines lasted 3 weeks. Vega Motors exposes internal fraud. Wall Street Journal. Billionaire CEO takes down his own VP to clear engineer's name. Forbes. Sofia Delgado, the woman who designed the future and lost everything. Wired. Sofia read them from her laptop in the small apartment above Route 9 diner, each article a strange vindication that felt both satisfying and hollow. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Job offers from Tesla, Ford, Porsche. Companies that had ignored her for 5 years now scrambling to hire the engineer whose story had gone viral. She declined them all. The knock on her door came at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the expo. Sofia knew who it was before opening. Alexander Vega stood in the hallway, and he looked different. No suit, just jeans and a plain gray shirt, hair slightly disheveled. The kind of tired that came from sleepless nights and heavy decisions. I'm resigning, he said without preamble. From Vega Motors, effective immediately. Sofia leaned against the doorframe. That's dramatic. It's necessary. Alexander's voice was quiet, firm. The board wants me to stay. Spin this as decisive leadership, but I can't. I looked at your file for 30 seconds 5 years ago and signed your termination. I didn't question, didn't investigate, didn't care enough to see the truth. You were grieving your father. That's not an excuse. His jaw tightened. I had power, and I used it carelessly. People like me, we destroy lives without even noticing. I noticed now, and I can't just go back to business as usual. Sophia studied him, the broken certainty in his eyes, the way his hands hung loose at his sides, no longer reaching for phones or power. What will you do? She asked. I don't know. Alexander laughed, hollow. First time in my life I don't have a plan. My mother is furious, by the way. Says I'm being dramatic and self-flagellating when I should be rebuilding. Helen's usually right. Not about this. Alexander met her gaze directly. I destroyed you, Sophia. Gave you 5 years of hell. I don't get to just apologize and move on like nothing happened. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the billionaire CEO. This was just a man trying to figure out how to live with what he'd done. Come in, Sophia said, stepping aside. I'll make coffee. Alexander hesitated, then followed her inside. The apartment was small, one room, basically, with a kitchenette and a door leading to a tiny bathroom. Nothing like the luxury he was used to. Sophia poured 2 cups of coffee, black for both. They sat at her small table, the silence stretching between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Damien's being prosecuted, Alexander said finally. Federal charges. The DA says he's looking at 15 to 20 years. Good. Sophia's voice was flat. No satisfaction, just fact. Helen wants to offer you your old position back. Chief engineer. Full benefits, public apology, compensation for lost wages, plus interest. I know. She called me yesterday. And? Sophia wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, feeling its warmth. I said no. Alexander's eyebrows rose. Sophia, that's exactly what I want. She looked at him steadily. I don't want to go back, Alexander. I want to go forward. There's a difference. Then what do you want? It was a good question. Sophia had spent 3 weeks fielding offers, reading articles, watching her name transform from cautionary tale to inspiration. Everyone wanted a piece of her story now. The wronged engineer, the brilliant mind, the woman who'd survived. But none of them asked what she actually wanted. I want to build something, Sophia said slowly, the words forming as she spoke them. Not for a corporation, not for investors. Something real, something that matters. Like what? I don't know yet. She smiled, small and genuine. But I'll figure it out. Alexander nodded, understanding in his eyes. For what it's worth, whatever you build, I'd like to help. Not as CEO or investor. Just as someone who owes you more than he can ever repay. You don't owe me anything, Sophia said, and realized she meant it. The anger had burned out somewhere between the expo and now, leaving behind something clearer. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. I owe you everything, Alexander corrected quietly. But I understand if you never want to see me again after this conversation. Sophia considered him, the man who'd destroyed her career, the man who'd also destroyed his own reputation to clear her name. The complicated, messy reality of people who made terrible mistakes and tried to make them right. Helen's having surgery next week, she said instead of answering directly. For the MS experimental treatment. She didn't tell me. She didn't want you to worry. Sophia stood, refilling both mugs. I'm going to visit her. You should too. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just human decency, extended across the gap between them. Alexander stood, looking at her with something like gratitude, mixed with grief. Thank you, Sophia, for being better than I deserve. I'm not doing it for you, Sophia said honestly. I'm doing it because your mother is a good woman who made a mistake trusting the wrong person, and because I'm tired of carrying anger around like armor. At the door, Alexander paused. The apartment above the diner. You're still staying here? For now. Lease is cheap, and I like the quiet. It's temporary though, right? You'll find something better? Sophia thought about the offers, the opportunities, the life she could rebuild. Eventually, but I'm learning not to rush forward just because I can. Sometimes staying still is the bravest thing. After Alexander left, Sophia sat at her window, watching the desert highway stretch toward the horizon. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and purple. The The kind of beauty that only existed in transition, in the space between day and night. Her phone buzzed. A text from Helen. Surgery scheduled for Tuesday. Don't let my dramatic son mope too much. He means well. Sophia smiled and typed back. I'll try. Good luck with the treatment. 3 dots appeared, then, luck has nothing to do with it. I'm too stubborn to let MS win. Come visit after. We need to discuss your future. I thought I said no to the job offer. Not that future, a different one. Trust me. Sophia set down the phone and looked at her reflection in the darkening window. 5 years ago, she'd been destroyed. 3 weeks ago, she'd been vindicated. Now she was something else entirely. Neither victim nor hero. Just a woman with choices and time and the freedom to decide what came next. The coffee had gone cold, but she didn't mind. Some things were better savored slowly. The abandoned garage sat on the edge of Route 9, all rust and broken windows and potential. Sophia signed the lease on a gray Tuesday morning, 3 months after the expo. The landlord, a weathered man named Joe who'd owned half the desert properties for 40 years, looked at her like she was crazy. This place hasn't been used in a decade, Joe said, gesturing at the collapsed roof section. The oil-stained concrete, the ancient hydraulic lift that probably hadn't worked since 2010. You sure you want it? Sophia walked through the space, her footsteps echoing. She could see past the decay to what it could be. Clean floors, working equipment, the smell of motor oil and possibility instead of abandonment. I'm sure, she said. Joe shrugged and handed over the keys. Your funeral, lady. But hey, at least the rent's cheap. Sophia spent the first week just cleaning, sweeping out years of dust and debris, scrubbing floors until her hands ached, patching the roof with materials bought from the hardware store in town. Alexander showed up on day 3 with a truck full of tools. I didn't ask for help, Sophia said, not unkindly. I know. Alexander unloaded a professional-grade tool chest. But I'm offering anyway. You can say no. She didn't say no. They worked in companionable silence, and Sophia found herself surprised by how competent Alexander was with basic repairs. He wasn't useless, just untested. By the end of the week, the garage had a new roof, functioning electricity, and the beginning of something real. Helen visited on a Saturday, wheeling herself through the open bay door with the kind of determination that said MS hadn't won yet. The experimental treatment had bought her time, maybe years. She wasn't wasting them. This is your grand plan? Helen surveyed the garage with sharp eyes. A mechanic shop in the middle of nowhere? Not just a shop. Sophia wiped grease from her hands. A training center. I'm going to teach people, especially women and kids who wouldn't normally get the chance, how to work on engines. Real skills, real opportunities. Helen's expression softened. That's ambitious. That's necessary. Sophia leaned against her workbench. There are girls out here like I was, smart, curious, capable, who'll never get a shot because they don't know the right people or go to the right schools. I want to change that. You'll need funding, Helen said pragmatically. Equipment, insurance, certification programs. I know, I'm working on it. What if I told you I had a foundation? Helen's eyes gleamed. Specifically designed to fund technical education programs. What if I told you I've been looking for the right person to lead the Nevada branch? Sophia straightened. Helen, I'm not offering charity. Helen's voice was firm. I'm offering partnership. You provide the expertise and vision. I provide the funding and connections. We build something that outlasts both of us. It was exactly what Sophia needed and hadn't dared to hope for. She looked at Helen, the woman who'd signed her termination 5 years ago, who'd also broken into Damien's office to find the truth, and saw an ally. Equal partnership, Sophia said. My name on the paperwork. No silent benefactor arrangements. Agreed. Helen extended her hand. They shook. 2 women who'd found common ground in wreckage. The transformation took 2 months. Delgado Motors emerged from the abandoned garage like a phoenix, clean, professional, equipped with state-of-the-art tools funded by Helen's foundation. The sign outside read, Training Center and Community Garage, all welcome. Sophia's first student arrived on opening day, a teenage boy named Eli Parker, 16 years old, recently orphaned, living with an aunt who worked doubles at the truck stop. He approached the garage hesitantly, hands shoved in pockets. You really teaching people to fix cars? Eli asked. I really am. Sophia gestured him inside. You interested? Can't pay. Didn't ask you to. Sophia handed him a wrench. I'm asking if you want to learn. Eli's eyes widened. For real? For real? By the end of the first month, Sophia had 6 students. By month 3, she had 15. Women from town who wanted better jobs. Teenagers with nowhere else to go. Adults looking for career changes. She taught them compression ratios and electrical systems. But more than that, she taught them confidence. Alexander became a regular presence, showing up Saturday mornings with coffee and surprising competence. He wasn't CEO anymore, just a man learning to use his hands, to build instead of command. "You're good at this," Sophia said one morning, watching him explain fuel injection to Eli. "Teaching?" Alexander looked surprised. "Being human." Sophia smiled. "It suits you better than the suit did." Their friendship had grown naturally, like a plant finding sunlight. No romance. That felt too complicated. Too soon, but genuine respect. The kind of connection built on shared work instead of shared history. Helen visited monthly, her health stabilizing, bringing equipment donations and spreading word about the program. Local newspapers ran stories. Auto Week did a feature. From scandal to service, Sofia Delgado's second act. But Sophia's favorite moment came 3 months in, when Eli successfully rebuilt his first engine, a 1995 Ford F-150 that had been sitting dead in his aunt's driveway for 2 years. He turned the key, and the engine roared to life, and his face transformed with pure joy. "I did it," Eli whispered, like he couldn't quite believe it. "You did." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. "And this is just the beginning." That evening, after everyone left, Sophia stood in the garage and looked at what she'd built. Not just the space, the tools, the equipment, the clean floors, but the future. Every student who learned here would carry these skills forward, would teach others, would prove that talent existed everywhere, not just in corporate towers. This was better than revenge, better than vindication. This was purpose. Alexander found her there, leaning against the doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah." Sophia turned to him, smiling. "Better than okay. This," she gestured at the garage, "this is what I was supposed to do all along. I just had to lose everything to find it." Profound. Alexander's tone was gentle, teasing. "Shut up." Sophia threw a rag at him, laughing. He caught it, grinning, and for a moment they were just 2 people who'd survived their own mistakes and found something worth building on the other side. The desert sun set behind them, painting the garage in gold. The sign, Delgado Motors, gleamed in the fading light. Sophia locked the door and went home, content. 6 months after Delgado Motors opened, Alexander invited Sophia to dinner in Manhattan. The location made her hesitate. Manhattan meant memories, Columbia graduation, job offers, the life she'd built before Damien destroyed it. The city felt like visiting a grave. "Why Manhattan?" Sophia asked over the phone. "Because running from places gives them power," Alexander said quietly. "And because there's something I need to show you." She almost said no, almost claimed she was too busy with the garage, with students, with the life she'd built in the Nevada desert. But something in Alexander's voice stopped her. Not desperation, but hope. The fragile kind that breaks easily if ignored. "Friday," Sophia agreed. "But I'm flying back Saturday morning. Eli has his certification test. I wouldn't expect anything else." The restaurant was small, tucked into a corner of the West Village that tourists missed. Not flashy, just exposed brick, candlelight, the kind of intimate space where conversations happened instead of performances. Alexander was already seated when Sophia arrived, and she noticed immediately that he looked nervous. His hands fidgeted with the menu. His smile was uncertain. "You look terrified," Sophia said, sliding into the booth across from him. "I am." Alexander laughed, hollow. "I've given presentations to hundreds of investors without breaking a sweat. But this," he gestured vaguely between them, "this scares me." Sophia ordered wine, something red and moderately priced. Not the expensive bottles Alexander probably usually chose. They made small talk about the garage, about Helen's improving health, about Eli's progress. Safe topics, familiar ground. But as dinner progressed, Alexander grew quieter, more pensive. Finally, as the waiter cleared their plates, he spoke. "This restaurant," Alexander said, looking around, "was where my father brought me the day before he died. We sat in this exact booth. He told me that building things was easy. Maintaining them was the hard part. Relationships, companies, reputations. All of it required constant care, constant attention." Sophia waited. sensing he needed to arrive at his point naturally. I didn't listen. Alexander continued. I thought building was enough. Thought success meant acquisition and expansion, not preservation and care. I was so busy building empire that I forgot about the people holding it together. You've changed, Sophia said simply. It was true. The man across from her bore little resemblance to the CEO who'd signed her termination. Because you forced me to. Alexander's eyes met hers. Not intentionally, not punitively, just by existing, by being brilliant and destroyed and resilient enough to rebuild. You made me see what I'd been blind to. He reached into his jacket pocket, and Sophia's heart skipped. For one wild moment, she thought, but he pulled out a folded piece of paper, not a ring box. This is the deed to a property in Nevada, Alexander said, sliding it across the table. 40 acres, adjacent to your current garage, zoned for commercial and residential use, enough space to expand Delgado Motors into a full training campus, dormitories for students, classroom buildings, whatever you envision. Sophia stared at the deed, her name printed clearly as owner. Alexander, I can't. You can. It's already done. Transferred legally. No strings, no conditions. His voice was firm. Consider it restitution for 5 years of stolen opportunity. This is too much. It's not nearly enough. Alexander leaned forward. Sophia, you could have destroyed me. Destroyed Vega Motors. You had every right, every reason, all the evidence. Instead, you built something beautiful and generous and transformative. You turned your destruction into creation. Sophia's throat tightened. She looked at the deed, at the gift that represented not just land but faith in her vision, and felt something shift inside her chest. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Alexander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Because somewhere in the last 6 months between rebuilding your garage and watching you teach those kids, I fell in love with you. He held up a hand before she could respond. I don't expect you to feel the same. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that this, he gestured at the deed, isn't about guilt or restitution anymore. It's about wanting to support what you're building because I believe in it, because I believe in you. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about the past year, the confrontation, the vindication, the slow building of trust between them. She thought about Saturday mornings in the garage, Alexander patiently explaining concepts to students, his hands stained with grease, his laughter genuine. She thought about how love wasn't supposed to grow from wreckage, but sometimes it did anyway. I can't promise you anything, Sophia said finally. I'm still figuring out who I am after everything that happened. I'm still learning to trust again. I know. Alexander's smile was sad, understanding. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking if you'll let me be part of what you're building. Not as benefactor or guilty party, just as someone who wants to help create something good. Sophia looked at him, really looked, saw the man who'd destroyed her career and then destroyed his own to make it right. Saw the complicated, messy reality of people who failed and failed again and kept trying. The garage expansion, she said slowly. If I accept this land, it's a partnership, equal decision-making. My vision, but your input when I ask for it. Agreed. And we take this slow, whatever this is between us. Sophia gestured between them. I need time. All the time you need. Alexander's voice was gentle. I've got nothing but time now. Sophia picked up the deed, feeling its weight. 40 acres. A future. The possibility of something beyond survival. Okay, she said. Let's build something together. Alexander's smile transformed his entire face. Not the calculated charm of a CEO, but genuine joy. Yeah? Yeah. Sophia smiled back, tentative but real. But I'm still flying back Saturday for Eli's test. I wouldn't expect anything else, Alexander repeated, and this time it sounded like a promise. They left the restaurant walking side by side, not holding hands, but close enough that their shoulders brushed. Manhattan glittered around them, the city Sophia had once loved, then feared, and now faced with something like peace. The past couldn't be changed. The damage couldn't be undone. But the future, that was still unwritten. And for the first time in 6 years, Sophia felt like she was holding the pen. The prototype sat on the workshop table like a promise made physical. Sophia and Alexander had spent 3 months designing it, a hybrid engine that combined traditional combustion with electric efficiency, but accessible, affordable. The kind of innovation that could power school buses and delivery trucks, not just luxury vehicles for people who could afford to care about the environment. Run the calculations again, Sophia said, not looking up from her laptop. Alexander, perched on a stool beside her, adjusted the thermal efficiency formula. Third time's the charm? Third time's the minimum for accuracy. Sophia's voice was focused, professional. This was her element, precision, logic, the beautiful certainty of mathematics. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past months. Mornings were for teaching at Delgado Motors. Afternoons were for this, the project they'd codenamed Phoenix 1, though neither mentioned the obvious symbolism. Eli wandered in from the main garage, wiping his hands on a rag. At 17 now, he'd grown 3 inches and gained the confidence that came from mastering a skill. He'd passed his certification test with near-perfect scores and had become Sophia's informal teaching assistant. "The fuel injection system is calibrated," Eli announced. "Ready for testing whenever you are." Sophia looked at Alexander. 6 months ago, this moment would have been impossible, the three of them working together, building something new from the ashes of old betrayals. Now it felt natural. "Right. Let's run it," she said. They gathered around the prototype. Alexander handled the electronic monitoring while Sophia managed the fuel systems. Eli watched with the intensity of someone witnessing history. The engine turned over once, twice, then caught, purring to life with a sound that was somehow both powerful and quiet, efficient in a way that traditional engines never achieved. The monitoring systems showed perfect readings, emissions minimal, power output exactly as calculated, the hybrid system switching seamlessly between combustion and electric. "It works," Eli breathed. "Holy shit, it actually works." "Language," Sophia said automatically, but she was smiling. "And yes, it works." Alexander pulled up the efficiency data, and his eyes widened. "Sophia, these numbers, this is 40% more efficient than anything currently on the market." 40%. "I know." Sophia felt satisfaction settle warm in her chest. "And we can manufacture it for a third of the cost of comparable systems." They'd deliberately designed Phoenix 1 without proprietary components that required expensive licensing. Every part was either generic or easily manufactured. The brilliance wasn't in complexity, it was in elegant simplicity. "We need to test it long term," Alexander said, ever practical. "But if these results hold—" "When they hold," Sophia corrected. "When they hold," Alexander agreed, smiling. "This changes everything. School districts could afford to electrify their bus fleets. Small businesses could upgrade delivery vehicles. This isn't just innovation for luxury markets." "That's the point." Sophia powered down the prototype carefully. "Innovation should serve everyone, not just people who can afford it." The community fair was Helen's idea. "Present it locally first," she'd said during her last visit. "Let the people who know you see what you've built. Then we'll handle the vulture investors." So, on a bright Saturday in November, Delgado Motors hosted an open house. The garage was packed. Students, their families, townspeople curious about the training center that had transformed the abandoned building. Local press showed up, along with representatives from school districts and small businesses. Sophia stood beside the Phoenix 1 prototype, suddenly nervous in a way she never was in the workshop. "You'll be great," Alexander murmured beside her. "Just explain it like you would to Eli." Sophia took a breath and began. She talked about efficiency and accessibility, about how innovation meant nothing if only the wealthy benefited, about designing systems that worked for the real world, school buses and postal trucks and the vehicles that kept communities running. The audience listened with genuine interest. Questions came, technical, practical, hopeful. A school superintendent asked about conversion costs. A postal service rep inquired about durability. Eli's aunt wanted to know if her ancient delivery van could be retrofitted. Sophia answered each question with clarity and honesty. This wasn't a sales pitch. It was an offering, a solution built from understanding what people actually needed. When the presentation ended, applause rippled through the crowd. Not the polite golf claps of corporate events, but genuine appreciation. Investors approached afterward, legitimate ones, not vultures. A clean energy foundation, a non-profit focused on rural electrification, a cooperative of small businesses looking for affordable fleet upgrades. Sophia took their cards, made no promises, and felt the weight of possibility settling on her shoulders. That evening, after everyone left, she found Alexander in the workshop, studying the Phoenix One with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked. "That 5 years ago I had everything and understood nothing." Alexander turned to face her. "Now I have less, and I finally understand what matters." "Which is?" "This." He gestured at the prototype, at the garage, at the space they'd built together. "Creating things that matter. Working with people who challenge me. Building something real instead of just accumulating more." Sophia moved to stand beside him, their shoulders touching. "It's a good engine," she said quietly. "It's a great engine." Alexander's voice was warm. "You're brilliant, Sophia. You always were. I'm just grateful I get to witness it now." She leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust, of affection, of the slow-growing thing between them that neither had named yet but both recognized. "We did this together," Sophia said. "You, me, Eli, Helen. All of us. Then let's keep doing it." Alexander wrapped an arm around her waist. "Whatever comes next." Sophia looked at the Phoenix One, at the engine that represented resurrection and reinvention, and smiled. "Yeah," she said. "Let's keep building." Delgado Motors expanded across the 40 acres like roots spreading through fertile ground. By spring, the original garage had become the teaching center, always full of students, always humming with the sound of engines and learning. 3 new buildings had risen on the property: a dormitory for students traveling from other counties, a classroom facility with computer labs and design software, and a manufacturing space where Phoenix One engines were assembled by hand. Sophia stood on the porch of the administration building, small, modest, but hers, watching the sunrise paint the desert gold. Coffee steamed in her hands. The morning was quiet, but in an hour it would transform into controlled chaos. "You're up early." Helen's voice came from behind her. Sophia turned to find Helen wheeling herself onto the porch, looking remarkably well for someone who'd been given 18 months to live 2 years ago. The experimental treatment had worked better than anyone hoped. She was still sick, still fighting, but winning more days than she lost. "Couldn't sleep," Sophia admitted. "Board meeting today with the foundation trustees. They want progress reports." "They want to throw money at you," Helen corrected, parking beside Sophia. "You've created exactly what I hoped for. Sustainable, scalable, actually helping people. The foundation board is thrilled." Sophia had learned to accept Helen's help without pride getting in the way. The Vega Foundation funded 60% of Delgado Motors' operations, but Sophia maintained control. Her vision, her standards, her refusal to compromise on quality or accessibility. "We're training 42 students this semester," Sophia said. 15 women, 27 men, ages 16 to 53. Last month, 18 graduates found jobs in automotive fields. 3 started their own repair businesses. And the Phoenix One production? 12 engines completed last month. Orders backed up for 6 months. "We can't manufacture fast enough." Sophia's voice held frustration and pride in equal measure. "We need more space, more equipment, more trained assemblers." "Then we expand again." Helen sipped her own coffee, brought from inside, probably by Alexander, who'd started staying in the small cottage on the property. "That's what the board meeting is for. They're proposing a second facility in Arizona." Sophia's chest tightened. Growth was good, but it meant delegation, trust, the possibility of losing control over what she'd built. "You're worried," Helen observed. "I'm cautious." Sophia watched students beginning to arrive for the early shift, their headlights cutting through the dawn. "I've seen what happens when good intentions meet corporate expansion. Things get corrupted. So you build in safeguards." Helen's voice was firm. "You hire people who share your values. You maintain oversight. You don't let fear of what might go wrong stop you from doing what's right." It was exactly what Sophia needed to hear, delivered with Helen's characteristic bluntness. The board meeting went better than Sophia expected. The trustees, a mix of educators, engineers, and philanthropists, understood her vision. The Arizona facility was approved with conditions Sophia had written herself: local hiring priority, sliding scale tuition. No student turned away for inability to pay. Alexander sat beside her during the presentation, silent but supportive. He'd officially joined Delgado Motors as operations director 6 months ago, trading his CEO title for actual work. He was good at it, better than Sophia expected. Organized without being controlling, strategic without being manipulative. After the meeting, they walked the property together, reviewing expansion plans. "The dormitory is at capacity," Alexander noted, We'll need a second building if we take the Arizona proposal. Already designed it. Sophia pulled up blueprints on her tablet. 50 beds, communal kitchen, study spaces. Estimated cost is within budget if we use local contractors. Alexander studied the plans, then smiled. You planned this months ago. I plan everything months in advance. Sophia returned the smile. You should know that by now. They'd settled into a comfortable partnership, professional during work hours, something warmer in the evenings. Not quite lovers, not quite just friends. Something in between that felt right for people still learning to trust again. Eli found them near the manufacturing building, his face flushed with excitement. Miss Delgado, you need to see this. He thrust his phone forward, showing a news article. National Automotive Ethics Award goes to Nevada Training Program. Sophia read the article, her throat tightening. Delgado Motors had won recognition for innovation in ethical manufacturing and accessible education. The award came with a $500,000 grant and national publicity. This is... Sophia's voice failed her. Deserved. Alexander finished quietly. This is deserved, Sophia. That evening, Sophia received an email that made her hands shake. It was from Damian Cross, prison email address. Subject line, I'm sorry. She almost deleted it unread. Almost. But curiosity, or maybe the need for closure, made her click. Sophia, I know this means nothing. I know sorry doesn't fix what I destroyed. But I need you to know that watching what you've built from prison, seeing the articles, the awards, the students, it's shown me what I threw away. Not your career, your integrity, your belief that engineering should serve people, not profit. I chose profit. I chose easy theft over hard work. I destroyed you because you represented everything I wasn't. Ethical, brilliant, genuinely good at what you did. You won, not because you destroyed me, but because you built something better than I ever could have imagined. I'm glad you survived me. I'm glad the industry gets to benefit from your mind. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you were right, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Damian Sophia read it twice, then closed the laptop. What is it? Alexander asked from the doorway. Closure, Sophia said simply. Finally. She didn't respond to the email, didn't need to. Damian's apology was for him, not her. She'd stopped needing his acknowledgement the moment she'd opened Delgado Motors. That night, sitting on the porch with Alexander, watching stars emerge over the desert, Sophia felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years. Peace, not happiness exactly. That was too simple for what she'd survived. But peace. The kind that came from building something good from terrible circumstances, from turning destruction into creation, from choosing to move forward instead of staying trapped in anger. You okay? Alexander asked softly. Yeah. Sophia leaned against him, comfortable with the contact now. I really am. The future stretched before them, uncertain, full of challenges, but theirs to build. And this time, the foundation was solid. 1 year later, the sign gleamed in the Nevada sun. Delgado Motors, building futures, one engine at a time. Sophia stood in the parking lot of what had become a campus. 5 buildings now, housing classrooms, dormitories, manufacturing spaces, and administrative offices. 200 students enrolled, 50 employees. Partnership agreements with school districts in 6 states. The Phoenix One engine powered 300 vehicles across the Southwest. School buses, postal trucks, delivery vans. Affordable, efficient, proving every day that innovation could serve everyone. Technical Automotive magazine had featured Sophia on their cover last month, the engineer who rebuilt herself. She'd done the interview reluctantly, still uncomfortable with publicity, but understanding its value for recruiting students. Today was graduation day for the spring semester class. 32 students completing their certifications, ready to enter the workforce or start their own businesses. Eli, 19 now, confident and skilled, was giving the student speech. Sophia watched from the audience as he took the podium, his voice steady. 3 years ago I had nothing, Eli said. No family, no prospects, no future I could see. Then Miss Delgado handed me a wrench and told me I could learn. She didn't see my circumstances. She saw my potential. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. Alexander's hand found hers, squeezed gently. That's what this place does. Eli continued. It sees potential. It builds futures. It proves that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. I'm heading to MIT in the fall on a full scholarship for mechanical engineering. That wouldn't have happened without Delgado Motors. Without Miss Delgado believing I was worth teaching. The audience applauded. Sophia saw students' families, parents who'd doubted, who'd watched their children transform, who now believed in possibilities they'd never imagined. After the ceremony, Sophia found herself surrounded by graduates, their families, teachers, everyone wanting to thank her, to share success stories, to promise they'd remember what they'd learned here. Helen wheeled through the crowd, her smile proud. You've built something remarkable. We've built something remarkable, Sophia corrected. None of this happens without the foundation's support. The foundation wrote checks. You created the vision. Helen's voice was firm. Don't diminish what you've accomplished. Alexander approached with champagne, modest bottles, nothing ostentatious. They'd learned together that celebration didn't require extravagance. A toast, Alexander proposed, raising his glass. To Sophia Delgado, who turned destruction into creation, who proved that second chances aren't given, they're built. Sophia felt her chest tighten with emotion. She looked around at the campus, at the students, at the life she'd reconstructed from ruins. To building things that matter, she said, raising her own glass. Together, they drank, and the desert sun warmed Sophia's face, and everything felt right in a way it never had before. Later, after the crowds dispersed and the campus quieted, Sophia walked through the original garage. It smelled like motor oil and potential, the same smell that had greeted her 3 years ago when she'd signed the lease on an abandoned building. Alexander found her there, leaning against the workbench where she'd taught her first class. Nostalgic? He asked. Grateful. Sophia turned to face him. For all of it, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, maybe. That's very evolved of you. Don't get used to it. Sophia smiled. I'm still pretty angry about losing 5 years. You should be. Alexander's voice was serious. But look what you built with the years you got back. Sophia looked at him. Really looked. The man who'd destroyed her career had become her partner, her friend, and somewhere along the way, something more. They'd never labeled it, never made it official, but it was real. Built on trust earned slowly, forgiveness given carefully, and the shared work of creating something meaningful. I love you, Sophia said, the words surprising her as they emerged. I don't know when it happened, but it did. Alexander's face transformed with joy. I've loved you for 2 years. I just didn't know if you'd ever feel the same. I feel the same. Sophia crossed to him, wrapped her arms around his waist. Imperfect, complicated, messy, but real. That's the only kind worth having. Alexander kissed her forehead gently. They stood together in the quiet garage, surrounded by tools and memories and the future they were building. Outside, the sun set over the desert, painting everything gold. Students' cars departed down the highway, carrying knowledge and skills and hope. The Phoenix 1 engines they'd helped build would power vehicles across the country, proving that good engineering could serve everyone. Sophia's phone buzzed, a text from a former student who'd just opened her own repair shop in Colorado. Success stories arrived daily now, each one a small vindication. We should close up, Alexander said. It's late. In a minute. Sophia wanted to savor this moment, the quiet satisfaction of work done well, of lives changed, of a future built with purpose instead of profit. She thought about the woman she'd been 7 years ago, brilliant, naive, believing the world was fair. She thought about the woman she'd become after Damien destroyed her, broken, hidden, surviving but not living. And she thought about who she was now, someone who'd taken wreckage and built something beautiful. Someone who'd learned that justice wasn't always punishment, that forgiveness wasn't weakness, that love could grow in unlikely places. Okay, Sophia said finally. Let's go home. They locked the garage together, Sophia's hand finding Alexander's as they walked toward their car. The sign, Delgado Motors, glowed in the fading light, a promise kept and a future beginning. Sophia had fixed more than engines. She'd fixed herself, and that was worth everything.